Our story begins with an unknown location. It's like an abandoned base. Trucks are parked outside and inside there's action about to unfold. The men in sight are both tied up. One's a soldier and the other is a professor. The soldier apologizes to the professor. He says it was never his plan for things to turn out this way. The prof calls him Major Kang, and he says he's the one to blame for their present situation. It was a rescue mission to save the professor, but things went south when their informant turned on them. Now the men are in despair. These men were highly trained soldiers, not just common militia. Not to mention they are triple the manpower of what their intel projected. They knew the details of Major Kang's operation, and completely ambushed them. The whole thing was a trap to rope them into this mess they find themselves now. They hear a rattling noise outside the door. Someone's coming. The door flings open and a member of his squad falls right in. He's Sergeant Kim, and he's badly wounded. They must have interrogated him using horrid methods. Major Kang jumps on his feet and faces the soldier, who brought his squad member back. The soldier at the door speaks in an unknown tongue, and then smashes his weapon hard on the major's head. Major Kang falls to his knees and the guy at the door smiles and takes his leave. The major grins in pain. I'm surprised he didn't go unconscious after such a hard hit across the back of his skull. The door shuts in front of them. He's frustrated. Things have really gotten to their worst. That bastard is playing them like pawns. These thoughts cloud his mind. Sergeant Kim asks about the major's well-being. Major Kang says he's all right, and he asks after their other squad members. His subordinate says he has no idea where his guys are. They all hear a rattling noise at the door, and they prepare their minds for whatever the thug from outside might have planned for them this time around. The door creaks open and the same soldier, who was here a few minutes ago. He must be back to taunt them some more. Major Kang asks what the guy wants this time around. In no time, the soldier falls face first to the ground, face unconscious. Behind him stands a young soldier. His face is covered up. He asks if any of the men in bondage is Major Kang. First thing the major takes to notice, the new guy just spoke Korean. He asks who this new guy was. From what he just heard, he understands the guy doesn't sound quite fluent in his Korean. That being said, he's certain he heard him speak Korean. The new guy says he came for them, and he asks the prisoners to follow him. They'd need to be fast and agile. All of them dash out with the new guy leading the bunch. As they move out, the men look around and see bodies lying unconscious all around. Major Kang wonders how the new guy pulled it off. All of the men knocked out and they'd heard nothing from their cell just now. That's more than impressive. The major asks what division the new guy came from and how many troops were deployed for their extraction. Our guy says he can't name who he works for, but he informs Major Kang he's here alone. No backup, no cavalry coming to save them. The major couldn't believe his eyes. There's no way this single guy took out all these men undetected. It's almost impossible. A guard comes into the light. He's spotted them. The men enter panic mode. The soldier who just showed up will give them away if he's not executed in a flash. Another one appears from behind the first two. Major Kang believes they can't get out of this mess without making noise or raising an alarm. Our guy dashes towards the two soldiers and uses his swift skills and his knife to take them both out in no time. He does this without reaching for his gun. Major Kang is stunned. He's so quick on his feet, and his skills are top-notch, it's amazing. He just disarmed two men without reaching for his gun. Our guy gets his pistol and fixes the silencer. He loads up his gun and asks them to pick up the pace. Things are going to get feisty in no time. Our guy says he'll take care of the hostiles as they proceed, and he asks the men not to use their rifles unless it's necessary. In simpler terms, he's telling them not to get in his way. Things get heated in no time. The silent pistol takes out all the hostiles in sight without raising an alarm still. He's so quick on his feet and precise with his marksmanship. Multiple hostiles are ahead. Major Kang hopes to help out too. Our guy dashes ahead of them and takes a turn ahead. The Major had hoped they'd wait up and strategize on what to do, but our guy wastes no time. He slides in and takes out the hostiles before they knew what hit them. Straight away he gets on his feet like it was a walk in the park. He loads up his gun immediately after his shots. Once more the Major walks up to the new guy's position and sees bodies lying lifeless. They've been taken out in seconds. Whoever their savior is, he's a literal beast. His tactics are too reckless for some typical military soldier. This much is clear to Major Kang. The men get to an opening and the new guy rests up against the wall and signals the rest to wait up. He takes a look around with stealth and says they'll have to wait here 1 minute. Major Kang is trying his best to keep up, as he's panting really hard. He asks why they are waiting when they are this close to making their escape. He turns his gaze in the direction of the sergeant and the professor. They are falling behind and they are both gasping for air. Major Kang had failed to take into account the men's weak state. He couldn't fathom it, but amidst the action and fast-paced movements, our guy was calculating all of it the whole time. He knew the men will be tired and that's the reason they stopped for a short while. Major Kang takes a look at our guy's features. He's got black eyes and he speaks good Korean, so he really gets him wondering who exactly this guy was. The Major asks if our male lead was Korean. No response from our guy. Major Kang wonders if he's hit the spot with his assumption. Our male lead asks that they move right that instant. The men make their way for the forest and away from the base they meet up other soldiers waiting on them in a jeep. They call on Major Kang. It's his platoon. He's certain they'd all been taken somewhere before now. The Major asks how they all got rescued and made it here. They inform him our guy had saved them all and instructed them to wait a while, and now he's come back with their Major, the sergeant and even the professor. Our male lead says this is where he part ways with them. He tells the men to head southwest and someone will be waiting for them. The Major appreciate him. Our guy says it's nothing. He's really just carrying out a commission. Major Kang smiles. He's figured it out now. The new guy is a mercenary. The Major stretches out his hand to appreciate him for the help and for saving his team. Our guy looks at the Major's opened palm awaiting a handshake. His eyes turn towards the bushes. Hostiles located. They've just shot something in the direction of the platoon. The mercenary tenses up at the sight. Major Kang too can hear the sound of something inbound. Our guy screams to the men to get down. It's a massive explosion. The flames are unrelenting. The migraines hit Major Kang, as he tries to make sense of his location and the situation of his men. He wonders if they've just been shot with a mortar. He covers his ears because of the loud ringing. He looks around and tries to locate his men and the professor. He confirms they are all unharmed. His eyes turn to the direction of the mercenary. Heavy gunfire is all he could see in front of him. Guns blazing. He couldn't believe his eyes. Our guy was fighting back all on his own. That's not the peak of it. The Major was dumbfounded. The mercenary, who'd done all this amazing things, and saved them all from peril was no more than a kid. 6 months later, at a high school, a new student is joining the class. The young man is asked to introduce himself. He's not said a word and the ladies were already complimenting his looks. A male student sits like a bully and wonders who the new kid is. The teacher stands in front of the class with the new kid. It's our guy. The teenage mercenary has come to high school. He introduces him. He is ljin. Oh my, how's this going to turn out? At the high school, a young lady pens something down in her notebook. She's thinking about someone. She wonders if he's in his homeroom class by now. A female student runs into class. She says she's just seen the cutest guy in their staff office. He's a transfer student and he's a third year. The other girls around all squeal at the news. The young lady wonders what they are all talking about. A transfer student, her. Maybe she saw this girl's brother. On her notebook, that's what she pens down. Her brother. That's all she can think of right now. She believed her brother died way back in the plane crash that took their parents. She never dreamed that he would return after 10 years. Out of the blue. They met up at the airport. She was mind-blown at the sight of him. Grandfather was bawling hour in tears. He couldn't believe his eyes. His grandson was alive. After all these years. She couldn't believe he was really her brother. As he embraced Granddad, their eyes locked and she was tense. He smiled back in her direction. He must be happy to see her after so long. She's Daeyeon. Someone screams her name and brings her back to reality, and out of her thoughts. The girl in front of her says she's been calling on Daeyeon for a while. Ijin's little sister apologizes. She says she's just been distracted is all. The blonde-haired girl orders Daeyeon to bring her gym uniform to her later. She's some sort of bully or something. Ijin's little sister says normally she'd give it to her, but there's a slight issue. If she gives the blondie her gym uniform, she'll have nothing to wear. The girl laughs at Daeyeon. She asks her not to talk back to her, and hauls curses on Ijin's little sister. Blondie smacks her hard on the head. The other bully doesn't mind what's going on as she's busy on her phone. The bully says she's been too nice to Daeyeon recently. Maybe a good beatdown in front of everybody will put her back in her place. How can high school girls be this cruel? Back in Ijin Yu's homeroom class, he's being presented to the class by the teacher. She says he's been living overseas for a long time, so she'll counting on the class to help him adjust into their system over here. All the girls begin blushing hard at the sight of him. He's so hot. That's the thought on every girl's mind. Some guy sits like some villain watching Ijin. Another guy watches on at the sight of the newcomer. The teacher says our guy can take the empty seat at the back of the class. He goes right to his seat. Some guy in an orange gym uniform wonders what's so good-looking about Ijin Yu. The menacing-looking guy at the back calls on Jae Hyung. And he immediately codes. He sets his foot out in an attempt to trip Ijin Yu. Our guy stops few meters away from the guy's foot. The two immediately stare at the ground. His plan has failed. Our male lead's strong perception saw through the attempt in a flash. Jae Hyung asks what the newbie was looking at and he clenches his teeth to make him look menacing. He must be the class's bully. Ijin Yu stares down at the bully. Jae Hyung asks if our guy's got a problem with him or something. Our male lead recalls his conversation with Major Kang before leaving overseas. The major says Ijin has to stay away from fights once he's back in Korea. Our guy says he knows that already. Our male lead says he wouldn't enter a combat situations without properly accessing intel about his surroundings. He's been trained by professionals, so there's no doubt about the quality of his skills. A rash decision could potentially cause him his life. Major Kang freezes at our guy's response. Ijin Yu has a very serious look on his face. He says he's survived countless battlefields over the last years because he's a pro. The major stops him in his tracks. He's more worried about the poor kids who'll end up going against this teenage mercenary. Jae Hyung asks who Ijin Yu thinks he is staring him down that way. Our guy keeps him calm, though he doesn't take his gaze off the bully. The teacher takes note of the encounter and asks what the problem was. Ijin Yu smiles at her and assures her there's no issue. Our guy takes few steps to his seat. Jae Hyung mocks the newbie, calls him a loser. Our guy keeps his smile shining bright. The teacher asks a student, Youngchan to help Ijin get ready for their first class for the day. He says he can handle just that. The teacher asks the students to have fun in their classes today, and she'll see them later. Youngchan introduces himself to our guy with a big smile. The two get along quite well. He glances around and leans closer to Ijin. He whispers to him asking if our guy's any bit nervous. He'd noticed Jae Hyung tried to trip him just now. The guy in orange, yes. That's Jae Hyung. Youngchan warns our guy to steer clear of two guys in this class. First is Jae Hyung Lee, and the other is Hyokjin Ju. The other guy who looked like a menace. Seems the two are really good friends. Our guy's not fazed. He's informed they've got math for their first period. Ijin appreciate Youngchan for the help. He's relieved the new guy seems like a nice guy. The math tutor walks in and instructs the student to turn their textbooks to page 47. The tutor begins scribbling on the board. Things seem pretty normal here. Ijin takes a look around his surroundings. The students taking notes, some dozing off in class, others joking around, and he takes a look out the window. Down on the field some more people are playing football. Things are just normal. It's unlike the battlefield he's been accustomed to over the last 10 years. Gruesome scenes. Brutal encounters with soldiers and the enemy forces. The brutal trainings and drills. He shuts his eye for a moment. This place, right here and now. The land is peaceful. He stares out into the clear skies. The school day rolls by. At the gate, students troop out to their different homes. Some girls wonder who the cute, tall guy at the gate was. Daeyeon sees a familiar face and stops in her tracks in surprise. It's Ijin. He's been at the gate waiting for her for a while. She's really startled. Her brother says he'd been waiting for her so they could both walk home together. He asks if she had any other plans, and she glances around so anxious. She assured him she's got no plans. He smiles and ventures to her for them to leave. Her eyes lit up in excitement. The two walk home together. They walk in silence for a while and it's kind of awkward. Ijin engages her in a conversation. He says he knows it's quite awkward for her. She's panicking, but she claims it's not awkward at all. Our guy says she's not alone. He also feels kind of weird being back after so long. He says he was 9 at the time of the accident, so he really doesn't remember much about his little sister nor his grandpa. He says he knows it must be even weirder for Daeyeon, since she was only 7 years old at the time of the accident. She's left speechless. They are walking by an open restaurant, and a familiar voice stops his sister in her tracks. It's the bullies from her class with a few huge guys. It appears they are waiting for someone. The bully takes note of Daeyeon walking by and calls her. She's really tense at the sound of her name. She wonders what to do. She doesn't want to have a terrible encounter with them, not when she's with her big brother. One of the guys asks who Daeyeon is. The bully says she's the girl who Ijin hates. She teases Ijin's little sister saying she's walking home with her boyfriend. Says she never deemed it possible for a weirdo like Daeyeon to get a boyfriend. His sister makes it known she's not with her boyfriend. She says it's just her big brother. The bully says she never knew Daeyeon had a brother. Ijin asks if the girl is his sister's friend. Daeyeon says she is a friend from her homeroom class. The bully didn't take it quite well. She asks if Ijin's little sister really thinks they are friends. She says no, they are not. One of the guys take offense to Ijin staring right at them. He asks what our guy's looking at. What's with people and having a problem with our male lead staring them right in the face? The guy tells Ijin to watch himself, so he won't get hurt. Our guy is unfazed. He's wondering if these thugs were trying to initiate a fight. One of the guys gets on his feet and walks up to our male lead with confidence. He asks if our guy was deaf, or had any hearing disorders. Lee pushes his sister to the side. The thug walks up to our guy and asks him if he's trying to tough because of his sister. Our guy does a quick analysis of the thug, and he could see so much room to take him down in an instant. The thug is leaving himself too wide open for someone trying to start a fight. He's closing in on Lee without a second thought, and all his vital points are open to attack. Well, I don't blame the thug. He has no idea he's facing off against a teenage mercenary. He's not with a weapon yet he's so confident. Lee really wonders why the thug is leaving himself exposed like this. Major Kang appears in his head, tells him not to fight. Our guy lets out a sigh and thinks to himself to just walk away. The thug grabs our male lead's shirt and attempts to slap him. In a flash, Daeyeon bows and apologizes for her brother's disrespect to all of them. She shouts at the top of her voice, says her brother lived overseas for a long time, so he not used to the way things work in Korea. The bully and the other guy laugh at the sight of Daeyeon begging. She's practically trembling with her head still bowed. The thug says he doesn't care about our guy living overseas before now. Lee remains in the thug's grip, but he fixes his gaze on his little sister. The sight makes him bothered. The fear in her eyes. In a flash, he hits the thug's wrist with precision and efficiency. The guy's hurting so bad, our guy's backpack falls to the ground, and he takes a couple steps towards his sister. He asks her to wait for him for just a minute. He uses his jacket to cover her face. He doesn't want her to see any of it. The thug rushes towards him from behind with his fist clenched. Lee sees him with his side eyes and stuns the thug with an uppercut to the chin. The guy falls to the ground in no time. The bully and the other guy couldn't believe their eyes. Lee lets out a sigh. His promise to Major Kang just flew out the window. He takes a stance and the thug is laying wasted on the ground with nosebleed. The second guy looks like he's preparing to launch an attack of his own. What's going to happen now? At the barracks, Major Kang is working with his soldiers. They are going over drills. Someone walks up to the major and salutes him. He asks if today was the day, Lee-jin's first day in school. Major Kang confirms it. He says they've taken the time to train our male lead for 6 months, but they can't help but worry. The young man had lived in such a hard place since he was only 9. They hope he'll adjust well back at home. Major Kang says his special training online in Korea would have done the trick, and he has a satisfied look on his face. The two men smile. No doubt about it in their heart. Back in Korea, at about the same time, Lee just kicked the ass of the thug trying to start a fight. He says his promise to Major Kang just flew out the window. He takes a stance ready to take on the second guy with the bully. He takes a look at the guys he's just knocked out. He went down too easy. Lee steps closer to the bully and the guy with her. He rushes in and buries his fist in the thug's stomach. One hit and the guy literally flies across the room. Our guy stands victorious over the two thugs. The bully is shocked. Fear grips her in her position. She couldn't move a muscle. Lee has that death stare in his eyes. He looks her in the eye and says nothing. She's trembling. Daeyeon takes off the jacket covering her face and calls on her brother. She sees both guys laying unconscious and wounded on the floor, and wonders how that happened in the matter of seconds. Her face was covered up by her brother's jacket. He turns his gaze to his sister, and the bully remains in position. She doesn't move a single muscle. He walks by her and says nothing to her. Lee apologizes to his sister and asks if he startled her. He immediately brightens up and asks if she'll like to get a snack from the store nearby. Daeyeon says she's fine. Her eyes buried in her brother's face. He looks so different right now. She hands over her brother's jacket. He receives it with a big smile and appreciates her. The bully is stunned. His whole aura switched up in a matter of seconds. He doesn't look like the same guy who glared at her a few minutes ago. Daeyeon says she'll see her homeroom mate later, and they take their leave. He glances at the bully as they walk away. She's shook. His gaze makes her tremble in horror. The siblings walk on ahead and Daeyeon asks what happened to the thugs earlier. If her brother did those things to the guys, and he says he did. She's surprised. It's strange cause Ijin doesn't seem like the type of person to pick a fight. She says in Korea it's rude to stare people in the eye like he did earlier. It will get him in very uncomfortable situations. Our guy says he knows where he's from. Meeting eyes with someone is usually dangerous depending on the opponent. She's even more surprised, so she asks why he did it if he knew it could be offensive to the people. He looks her in the face and recalls how scared she looked then. Ijin says he did it because it seemed like his sister was being troubled. Her eyes lit up, she practically melts. No one's ever stood up for her like that. Our guy wonders if he said anything wrong. Night time came and they'd just had dinner with Granddad. He was practically jolting cause he didn't want his grandson to do the dishes. Ijin assures his grandfather he can handle the dishes. Grandpa calms down a bit. He's a bit restless though. Our guy does the dishes with ease. Grandpa asks if dinner wasn't too bad for our male lead. Ijin says he enjoyed the meal. In fact, he's been eating so well because every meal has been delicious. Grandpa is a bit relieved. Daeyeon smiles too. She knows how hard Granddad has worked on his cooking to prepare for Ijin's return home. He asks what she thought of their dinner. She says it was wonderful. Grandpa asks how our guy's first day of school was and if anything interesting happened today. Our guy turns in Granddad's directions and says it was a good first day. Grandpa looks pleased to hear that. They all wish each other a good night's sleep and everyone goes to bed. In bed, Ijin stays up for a while staring into the void of nothingness. He takes a while and recalls memories from the past. First it was his reunion with Granddad and his sister. Grandpa was bawling out in tears at the sight of his boy. He was so glad to see our guy alive and well. Then the time they are at the table together. Granddad looked so happy. These thoughts clouded our guy's mind. Family. That's the word. He shuts his eyes and goes to bed. Alarm. Alarm. There's an emergency on the plane. The oxygen masks all fall out and the little boy's parents covers up his face. There's commotion and everyone's panicking. It's all going so bad so quickly too. His eyes shine bright in horror. The plane crashes with its nose diving straight for certain peril. Our male lead jolts up in bed. He gasps for breath. He's panting so hard. It was a dream. A terrible dream. The alarm clock beside his bed rings. It's a new day already. Ijin sits in bed in silence for a while. He hears a rattling noise coming from outside his room and turns in the direction of the noise. He steps out of his room with his hands holding his aching head. Daeyeon is up already. She's made breakfast and set the table. He asks where their grandpa was. His sister says Granddad left quite early for work. Ijin is genuinely surprised to hear Granddad left the house to go to work. Daeyeon says Grandpa took some time off work to be honest with her brother when he returned. He just resumed back to work today. His sister waves him goodbye. She says she has to leave for school now, but she asks him to eat breakfast. Daeyeon rushes off. He appreciates her for the meal and she leaves. Our guy turns to the table and his sister had really gone wild with breakfast. So many meals set at the table. In school, the bully meets up with the blondie. She says the transfer student from yesterday was Daeyeon's elder brother. The girl looked so tense. The glare was still fresh in her heart. The whole encounter was terrifying to her. He knocked both the guys out with single punches. Not long afterwards, Blondie approached her and asked what happened. The blonde-haired girl was Jin. The bully was rethinking picking on Daeyeon now. That look in her brother's eye was forever stuck in her mind. It has pretty much traumatized her. She tells herself all is well and things won't go crazy. Jin's brother and his posse basically run the school, so that's the reason she could relax a little. Down the stairway, Jin grabs hold of Daeyeon and throws her hard across the wall. She's so menacing. Jin's little sister asks what the girl wants from her. Jin asks her to follow her for a second. Daeyeon asks where she wanted to take her. A maniacal look appears in the blondie's eyes. She asks if Jin's sister believes things have changed just cause her brother is now in their school. She orders Daeyeon to shut her trap and follow her unless she'd rather get a beating out here in the stairway. The girls head outside and Jin beats up Jin's little sister. She says she'd told Daeyeon to keep her head down. Our girl says she has no idea what the blondie was talking about. Jin says she shouldn't play dumb with her. She's talking about yesterday. She's on her phone and send a message to someone. She says Jin you thinks he's tough, and he's the reason little Daeyeon is acting up now. She says it's too bad, because her brother runs this place and Jin Yu is in for one interesting welcome to JHS High. She's got something terrible in mind. Daeyeon is alarmed. Jin asks if our girl knew who her brother screwed with yesterday. Those thugs were Jin's brother's friends, and they should be paying a visit to Jin Yu right about now. Daeyeon's eyes are filled with fear. She demands to know what they've got planned for her brother, and as such Jin shuts her up with a hard slap across the face. It leaves a bruise. Our girl isn't fazed, all that's on her mind is her brother. He's in trouble. Her eyes tear up at the thought of her brother getting hurt because of her. She immediately jolts up on her feet and dashes towards her brother's class. Jin couldn't stop her. She calls on Daeyeon, but gets totally ignored. Back at Jin Yu's class, everyone looked like they'd seen a ghost. Trouble is brewing and it's got Jin Yu's name written all over it. Everyone had eyes set on the new guy. The posse walks in looking all intimidating. Our guy turns in their direction, he's unfazed at the sight of them. The guys he knocked out yesterday lead the way. Behind them stood Jin's brother. He had peculiar hair. Daeyeon bursts into the class panting heavily and she calls on her brother. Our male lead turns in her direction. He looks so concerned. He could see the bruise on her cheek and the stains on her clothes. The posse ask if his little sister ran all the way here because she was worried about her big brother. Jin's brother says his own sister pretty much just nags him non-stop to do stuff for her. She's not far off. Blondie says she'll worry about her brother when he actually gets beaten by someone. Amidst all this, Jin Yu couldn't take his eyes off his little sister. It was like they were all alone in this world. She is his world. All he had left was Daeyeon and Granddad, and he's not going to sit and watch them get hurt. These people will pay dearly for hurting his little sister. Enjoying this story so far? Drop a comment showing your interest in a part 2 and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Until next time, adios.